Thank you, Paulo, for the pressure.
Apparently,
Pressure makes that.
I'm the star of this whole seminar.
Everybody.
But it's pressure that I'm used to because being a human capital executive, I'm in charge of people's happiness at work. People believe that HR is responsible for that. So people, when they're unhappy at work, they come up and say, Ramona, I'm unhappy. What are you going to do as HR? So I'm used to the pressure, and I hope that my presentation today will live up to the expectations. Obviously, in placing you, in assisting you as you're here today, placing yourself, positioning yourself for a career in the oil and gas industry. And I think you being here tonight already shows that you're committed and you're already developing yourself in positioning yourself to be able to benefit from the outcomes of the oil and gas, from the oil discoveries that we have. So being at this seminar today, you're gonna get knowledge, and they say knowledge is power. And with this knowledge, there's a lot that you're gonna be using to able to develop yourself as an individual. With that, good evening, everyone. My name is Ramona Itembu, as Paulo has said. I am the Acting Executive Human Capital at NAMCOR. I'd like to welcome all our esteemed invited guests, those online and those here physically. And the topic today that I'll be presenting is positioning yourself for a career in the oil and gas industry and an overview of NAMCOR's capacity building intervention. Being an HR personnel, I think my personal passion is people development. And as Paulo had said, is that it's all I talk about. And I believe that opportunities are taken and not given. So if you don't believe in capacitating yourself and developing yourself, those opportunities are going to come and they're going to pass you by. And we find those typical entitled employees or entitled Namibians who say, why is it only Survey who got the positions at NAMCOR? Why not me? But they don't look at what did I do to position myself to be able to get a position at NAMCOR. Okay. Just the presentation outline, just the outline of my presentation. I'll be talking about the National Upstream Petroleum Draft Local Content Policy, and then go into the national capacity building interventions that are available for all Namibians. And then we'll talk about the capacity building interventions in NAMCOR, and then career opportunities in the oil and gas industry, and how best to position yourself. So, as I said, opportunities are taken and they are not given. As you know, we might have some farmers here, and every farmer will know that they need to prepare for the rain in order for them to be able to harvest. So if you don't prepare yourself for the rain that is coming, which is all the benefits, the socioeconomic benefits that are going to come with the oil and with the discovery of oil in Namibia, you're going to be left behind. So today's presentation will help you on how best you can prepare yourself for the rain, how best you can prepare yourself for the rain, and how you can prepare yourself to harvest when that rain comes. Okay. So what is a local content policy? For those that were here yesterday, my colleague Ian talked about socioeconomic benefits that will come from the oil and gas industry or the oil discovery. So I would think that the local content policy is basically your biggest enabler to ensuring that as Namibians we can benefit from the socioeconomic benefits. The Ministry of Mines and Energy, who's the regulator in the oil and gas industry, they are the custodian of the local content policy. However, there are many key players who are helping ensuring effective implementation of that local content policy. The local content policy looks at 5 objectives. Just to name them quickly, they look at identifying identification of specific sectors for the development of local capacity, maximizing employment and development of Namibians, maximizing the participation of local suppliers along the value chain, encouraging the transfer of technology and skills, and 5th, promoting Namibian ownership and financing at all levels of the sector. One of the key objectives that I want to touch on is the one objective where it talks about maximizing employment for Namibians. So what the local content policy will be looking at is obviously to see what type of skills will be needed and competencies will be needed for us to effectively and efficiently implement our oil and gas value chain in the country. And they will then look at what are the skills that Namibians currently possess. And interventions are then going to be developed to ensure that we close those gaps, to ensure that we can at least get Namibians ready to take on managing the oil and gas industry in Namibia themselves. All right. And the second one is maximizing participation of the Namibians in the oil and gas sector. This is now looking at the local suppliers of goods and services. As we said, that the social economic benefits that are going to be coming are going to be immense and they're going to be a lot. So yes, it's only going to look at creating employment. It's also going to look at creating businesses. So if you're an SME, the local content policy is also looking at interventions on how best we can maximize that knowledge and skills and transfer to local firms so they can take up the various skills that will come. For example, your catering that will be needed, your transport, and something as small as even your travel agencies, because it's going to have an influx of people who are going to be importing skills into Namibia, and we probably need to work at looking at work permits and so forth. So that is one the main objective of the second objective in the local content policy. The third one is encouraging the transfer of skills. To foster the transfer of knowledge to Namibian workers and businesses. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Government will require foreign oil companies to develop technology and research facilities in the country to promote and accelerate the development of Namibian citizens. Okay, so as we are gearing towards the first oil production, we do know that many of the Namibians don't have the skills. We'll be importing those skills into Namibia. However, the local content policy is saying that we need to ensure that there are plans that have been put in place to ensure that we are transferring the skills to Namibians to obviously lessen the dependency on foreign skills in the country. In February this year, a group of myself and some of my colleagues, we traveled to Qatar. We went to visit Qatar Energy. And what I was so impressed with how they are busy doing transferring skills to their nationals is that in any department that we went, if you found a foreign national, you were rest assured that there was either a Qatari who was an understudy, or there's a Qatari who's been sent overseas to go and develop their skills to take over. So they got a deliberate efforts to ensure that they empower their Qatari nationals to take over this industry and also then benefit their nationals. So we hope that this will also be the same type of principle and framework that will ensure that Namibians are going to be skilled and developed to take over in our own national oil and gas industry. Okay. It's also about promoting Namibian ownership and financing. As we know, if you're starting up a business, capital is very important. So what the local content policy wants to look at as well is to ensure that we have the financing companies and also local investors or even foreign investors who can assist to collaborate with Namibians to set up those various business sectors in the country. So we hear a lot when people talk about, there's so many policies that are written. How will we ensure that this will be effectively implemented? So the Ministry of Mines and Energy, like I previously alluded, they're the custodian of the local content policy. However, we've got key players in the market who also need to ensure that we effectively implement the local content policy. So obviously our regulator will be doing a lot of the monitoring and the regulation of this local content policy. However, like NAMCOR is also a key player in the local content policy. We also have a very, very important task to play. As a custodian of the shareholders' interest in everything oil and gas, we've got a very big role to play because we are taking care of the country's interest in the national oil and gas industry. So when we sit around tables, sitting with our JV partners and discussing petroleum agreements, as NAMCOR, we need to ensure that we look at ensuring that we get the best for the Namibians when we finalize those agreements. We also need to give input to all those oil companies that are partnering with NAMCOR to ensure that the Namibian nationals can then benefit from this. And obviously also being an employer, being a national oil company, we're also an employer, so we're also contributing to that to ensure that Namibians are employed in our company. So that's just on high level, some of the key things that will ensure that we implement the local content policy effectively. So with the previous discussions, there's a lot of talks about the upstream industry, the downstream industry, but how will I or you make sure that we're able to benefit? All right. So we need to ensure that we look at the national capacity building interventions. So Petrofund was established in 1993, and the reason that Petrofund was established is to ensure that we develop able to develop Namibians in the oil and gas industry. So the government of the Republic of Namibia, through the Petroleum Act of '91, empowered the Ministry of Mines and Energy to conclude agreements with individual oil companies who are granted oil exploration rights in Namibia to contribute an agreed amount of money to Petrofund. So any oil company that is here looking for a license, they need to establish, or the government needs to negotiate a certain amount that will go towards developing Namibia. So that negotiated amount that they discuss, a portion of it goes into Petrofund. I'm sure many of you have heard of Petrofund. We were talking, I think, 80% of our speakers today are all alumni of Petrofund. So you can see it's really a fund that is effective, and we are seeing the fruits of those alumni working in the oil and gas industry. So the various type of studies that Petrofund sponsors, they sponsor high school scholarships for the underprivileged, undergraduate scholarships. Those are not usually specific for oil and gas, but however we know that this would obviously lead to people needing to specialize in oil and gas. That is why they also then fund those undergraduate scholarships. They also then give postgraduate scholarships. Usually those are for specializing in the oil and gas industry. And they also assist graduates to get internship placements once they finish studying. Okay. So what Petrofund does and how they determine what type of funding or what type of scholarships they would give. They also look at the market to say, what are the gaps that we have with regards to skills that are needed in Namibia? So if for the past 5 years they've been sponsoring geoscientists, and they realize that we've got quite an influx of qualified geoscientists in the country now, they will then look at the funding for other type of scholarships. For example, maybe we don't have enough petroleum economists or petroleum engineers in the country, and they would then focus their attention on and then funding for those type of studies. So if you want to know more about the type of scholarships that they give, and the criteria that you need to then meet, you can just visit their website, which is on the screen, or you can also give them a call. We've got very, very efficient and quite friendly staff there at Petrofund, and then they can assist you with that.
There's currently a scholarship running now.
Okay, thank you very much. As you heard, there's currently a scholarship running, so if you are aspiring to study, please do check out their websites, check out their social media pages, and ensure that you do not miss out and apply. Thank you, Franz. Okay. So remember I talked about the training fund that all local, all oil companies, who are all license holders need to invest in. 70% of that goes to Petrofund. However, 30% is then left for in-house training fund. What the in-house training fund does is that it looks at funding and upskilling employees who are already in the oil and gas industry. So somebody who's working for NAMCOR obviously can then benefit from this training fund, or somebody working at the Ministry of Mines and Energy. So this fund is specifically there so that they can look at capacity building of Namibians who are already in the industry. For example, sending them for secondment so that they can have transfer of skills, or sending them for specific skills upliftment where they need to specialize in a specific area. Now to my bread and butter. We'll be talking about NAMCOR's capacity building intervention. All right. So I like to say that NAMCOR employees are the most important resources in the company because we can have the best strategic plans in place. However, if we do not have efficient and competent staff who are going to ensure that we execute those strategic plans, we're probably not going to efficiently manage the resources for the country. So as an HR executive, I'm in charge of ensuring capacity building in NAMCOR, and I'd just like to give you an overview of NAMCOR's business. So we'll start off by just giving an overview of the NAMCOR's business model. So we have what we call the NAMCOR Holdings, which is our primary company. That usually houses a lot of the support functions. And then we've got the two subsidiaries, NAMCOR Trading and Distribution. This is our downstream business. And then we have the NAMCOR Exploration and Production, which is our upstream business. Currently, we have a staff complement of 202 employees. And you can see our gender distribution is that we've got 54% male and we've got 46% female. And I think this is a gender distribution that we're very happy to see because, you know, people tend to think that oil and gas industry is very male dominated. And you can see at NAMCOR we're able to get this balance right. And obviously something that we need to work on continuously and improve. And also one thing that we're very happy about is that we've got about 33% females at the oil storage facility. If you've seen oil storage facilities in many countries, that it's very much male dominated. In some countries even you'll find maybe one female if you are lucky. So at our national oil storage facility, we are happy to say we've got about 33 females. And we also have some interns from our oil storage facility who are in engineering who've also come to attend today. And out of the three that came, 2 are females as well. All right. Okay. So what development strategies do we put in place at NAMCOR? As I said before, that we need to ensure that our employees are competent, as they need to ensure that we effectively implement our strategic objectives in the organization. So what we start with, I'm going to go into some HR theory, but just so that you can have an understanding on how we get to build this capacity. We start every 3 years or so, we do what we call a capacity building, a skills gap analysis. So basically a skills gap analysis is where you just want to identify what are the key competencies that you need in a specific role and what are the competencies that the person who's in this role has. So then you look at the gaps that you pick up in the skills gap analysis and develop what we call your personal development plan for each employee. And that personal development plan then leads us to obviously draft our annual training plan so that we ensure that all trainings that we are investing in our employees is directed to ensure that we upskill them to be the best in their current positions. NAMCOR also has what we call a study assistance scheme, which I think is one of the best benefits that we have. As you heard from Paula, I'm currently studying my master's degree with the University of Salford, and the company is fully paid for giving me a full scholarship for that study. So it's really something that is beneficial for employees and also helps. I think it's a win-win because if you have competent employees, you're also going to be able to see the improvement of your bottom line as an organization. So other programs that we would like to obviously introduce as a national oil company is graduate development programs and also internship programs. Obviously with this we know that this costs money and we're hoping that once the appraisals are done that obviously the oil discoveries are going to be economically viable and they're going to be funds that we can then obviously inject back into the Namibian nation. So with the graduate development program, we're looking obviously at graduates who have no experience at all and giving them an opportunity to get the experience and exposure that they need so they can become a competent, employable people in the future. And then the internship program as well, you know, we have a lot of students who don't know what to specialize in, gives them an opportunity to come in for 3 months in our organization and get exposure to various areas where they can actually see ways that they feel that they can fit in there. So what careers can you find in the oil and gas industry? I'd like to start with career opportunities that we find in NAMCOR. So as I said before, we've got the holding company which houses mostly our support services. So if you're currently a student and you study human resources, ICT, corporate governance, if you're a lawyer, finance, public relations or administration, you have opportunities at NAMCOR. And as we know that as we go along up to production of first oil, obviously our workforce is definitely going to be growing from the 202 that we had because we'll need more capacity in the organization. So there's opportunities at NAMCOR in the future for you if you're a student in the various fields that you can that you're busy studying. And then we have our trading company, which is our downstream. Obviously, there we look at more of the sales and marketing type of jobs, your supply and logistic type of jobs, your lube specialists, and people who manage the oil storage facility. There'll also be opportunities there at NAMCOR. And as I said before, career opportunities at the National Oil Storage Facility. The picture that you see there, it's an aerial view of the oil storage facility that we have in Wildfish Bay. And as Petrus had alluded to say that we don't have enough storage in Namibia. The reason why the oil storage facility was developed to start with is obviously to ensure that we can have enough supply. Before the oil storage was constructed, we only had supply, if imports could stop like today, we only had supply for petroleum products for 5 days. So with the construction of the oil and gas, it has increased that to about 30 to 45 days. Okay. So there's also career opportunities in our upstream company. Obviously, that's where you use the technical specialized skills where you've got your geoscientists, reservoir, petroleum engineers, petroleum economists, and geoinfo specialists. So as we go through the value chain, or basically the timelines from when you discover oil to when you get to production, there's different type of personnel that is required. So currently we are sitting now at appraisal. So what they're doing at appraisal, I'm sure yesterday you probably heard from the various speakers, is that you want to ensure that the oil discoveries that you found, if they're economically viable or not. So here you've got a lot of technical skills that are required. So you'll need your geoscientists, geophysicists, drilling engineers, petrophysicists, production engineers, reservoir engineers, and also your petroleum economists. So those are current skills that we have in NAMCOR as well, and also in the industry. But as we go along, obviously, the type of skills that will be needed are growing, okay? And I just want to indicate that usually when you get to FID, which is your final investment decision, so this is when you have now found out that you find your oil discovery is economical viable, and you make your final investment decision, is now when construction will now start happening in order for you to get to your production. So at this point is where a lot of your TVET type of careers will kick in, okay? Because there's a lot of construction that's going to be happening. You need to start with your productions at your production facilities, your, what do you call it? Sorry, at your ports. What do you want us to get there?
Logistics hub.
Yeah, your logistics hubs and so forth that you need to get to prepare you for your production. So a lot of those careers will then start increasingly. So many people tend to think that a lot of technical positions or employment opportunities is what's going to come from the oil and gas, but it's actually your vocational type of qualifications that will be needed most, where most of the people will be employed. For example, Petrus Indimba talked about the FPSO, which is basically your production facility. They are going to be the ones who are going to employ the most people. And most of the people that are going to be employed there is more vocational type of employment. Okay. So as I said before, as we're growing, moving the timeline to production, these are the various type of skills that will be needed. So for example, these are type of skills that NAMCOR also need and also the industry. So if you are studying to become a lawyer, I would advise that it would be best for you to probably specialize in upstream law. If you are an economist, probably the best will be for you to study and specialize to become a petroleum economist if you want to partake in the oil and gas industry, because that will give you a better advantage over others. So how are you able to apply for opportunities at NAMCOR? What we do usually is that we advertise all career opportunities in our local media newspapers, websites, social media handles, and also on ears. So if you have your phone now and you're not following any of our social media handles, I'd then really advise and recommend that you currently follow us right now on our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn handles, because that's where the opportunities will be advertised so that you do not lose out or miss out on those opportunities. Okay. So we've talked about careers, but also there's going to be a lot of spin-offs in the industry where people can then obviously participate in the oil and gas industry, especially your small to medium companies can participate either directly or indirectly in the industry, all right? So we've got our maintenance operations, you've got your engineering, procurement, construction and installation industry that will also grow, your wellness services, drilling contractors, subsea and seismic segments. Those are areas that you can look at if you are a business owner and you're wondering what type of business opportunities there can be, where you can obviously then benefit from the oil and gas discoveries in the country. All right. So remember I spoke about the TVET careers and business opportunities. So this slide actually explains it well on how we're gonna need the TVET type of vocational careers or personnel as we get to production. So this triangle is almost like a graph. Okay. So when you're at exploration and appraisal, you don't really need too much of your TVET type of careers. But as you grow further into production, that is when you will need a lot of the TVET type of personnel who will then obviously work in your production or offshore facilities and so forth. Okay, but it's not that easy. Doesn't mean that if I currently right now have maybe a trade in being a welder or electrician, that I can just then get onto an offshore facility and start working. Okay, there's a very highly regulated and highly specialized industry that you need to have specialized certification to be able to work on those offshore facilities. So to prepare yourself to be able to work in the oil and gas industry on those facilities, it will be best for you to make sure that find out what type of certifications will you need to be able to get to be employable on those offshore facilities. And as I spoke also earlier before, there are capacity building interventions because the certifications are not cheap. Okay, so look at your capacity building opportunities that are there for funding with either the Petro Fund or the Ministry of Mines and Energy, so that you can then prepare yourself for that. Okay. So who are the potential employers? The potential employers are basically the key players in the industry. As I said before, NAMCOR, who's the national oil company, obviously will be looking at increasing our workforce, so there are opportunities there. We've got our international oil companies. Right now, the two, the Venus and Graph discoveries are led by Shell, Vivo, and Total Energies. Okay, so as they're coming to set up facilities in Namibia, they will also be looking for employees in their companies. And we also have the international service companies. Usually these companies are subcontracted by your oil companies, obviously for different services like recruitment, logistics, and so forth. So they're also people that you need to look at. So this slide is very important. Paulo did mention that we are going to share this so that if you do want to go and do some further research on how you can position yourself in getting into employment with these companies, you can do that. And also our local companies that we need to provide services in the industry. Like for example, your waste air Aviation, it's now Fly Namibia. They would obviously need to probably have a lot of planes that need to fly people to the offshore facilities. So as you know, when Air Namibia closed, a lot of the pilots were out in the street. So this also creates those opportunities in the aviation industry for people to be employed. Okay. Right. So as the topic of my presentation today says, how are you going to position yourself? So what do you need to do? So my presentation today obviously was on high level. I was just placing the breadcrumbs that you can follow in order for you to be able to position yourself and be ready for the rain. Okay. I suggest that you follow the social media pages, websites and LinkedIn pages of the key players in the industry, especially the oil companies and the service companies. And just an example here, it's an advert from Schlumberger, that is a service company that they placed about 5 days ago on their website for a logistics specialist, okay, that they want to employ. So you can see that it's not necessarily a technical skill in the oil and gas industry, but because of the social benefit that's going to come from obviously the increase of the GDP research and know more about this industry, and you'll be able to position yourself well. With that said, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to my presentation.